Hi, everybody. Bill Prince here again, and I wanted to take you through a second walkthrough of the CapSim simulation now that you have 4 practice rounds under your belt, and maybe this walkthrough will make a little more sense to you than the one we did at the beginning of the course. At the beginning of the competition rounds, which are going to be starting next week, everything will reset back to square one. So just as it was at the beginning of the practice rounds, so too it will be at the beginning of the competition round. So you've got a clean slate with which to begin. Now let me mention just a couple of things about this simulation, which I think some folks take for granted. First of all, this is hard. Do not expect to simply, jump in here and start plugging in numbers, hit upload, and then be dismayed when you look at your outcomes the following week and go, oh my gosh, what happened? And then just continue to upload decisions kind of willy-nilly. You could really spend a couple of hours, maybe more, playing around with this. Every action has a reaction. As we'll see, when you increase automation, that's going to have an impact on your R&D costs and possibly the age of revision. Everything is related to everything else, and really what you need to sit down with is some time, a calculator, maybe a spreadsheet, maybe a piece of paper where you start writing down some things and do some stuff trial and error. Don't expect to get it perfect right away. Some people never get it perfect. As I've told some students, I play along with folks every round, and there have been classes where I've done exceedingly well. Most of the time I do okay, and then there have been times when I've gotten my butt kicked all over the place. So every simulation's a little bit different, and yes, there are some rules and there's some formulas that we'll share, but a lot of it is going to depend on what's going on with each simulation and in each simulation environment. So don't get frustrated, but also remember you got to spend a little bit of time with this, and the more time that you spend with it, I would expect that the time that you spend on each round will decrease significantly as you go from round 1 to round 8. But you've got to pay attention to the Capstone Courier. You've got to pay attention to the industry conditions report to see what's going on. So let's start making some decisions here. Again, I've pulled up the R&D page on my competition here. We're at the beginning of this may be practice round 1 or just round 1. They've got it at here, and so we're going to start making some R&D decisions. Now, again, these are the decisions here that I'm kind of flipping the cursor over that are default and are there already for you, and you seldom want to go with any of the default decisions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go look at my industry conditions report, okay, because we're in round 1, and we are going to go, there's our friend the industry's condition report right there, and maybe it'll come up, there we go. And there's a number of things you can look at here, and again, I would suggest this because it sort of talks to you about what the interest rates will be, where people in each segment want things, their product to be, and so on and so forth. But what I'm interested in is sort of the drift rates. Again, remember, over the course of the simulation, these circles are going to progressively move down and to the right. So each round, in theory anyway, customers are going to want products that are smaller and faster. So these are going to drift down this way, all right? So I want to look at the drift rates, and so I want to look and see, we're at round 0. Where are these things going to be? Where the segment circles basically going to be at the end of round 1, and this tells me, for example, in the traditional range, they're going to be at 5.7 and 14.3. In the low range, they're going to be 3.0 and 17, 8.4, and so on and so forth. Now, again, you're not necessarily going to want to position everything in the exact center. As you read, through here in the customer buying criteria and things like that, you will see that, some company or some segments, for example, traditional, they're mostly concerned about the age of the product, 2 years old, and they're concerned about the price of the product, between $20 and $30 a unit. So 70% of their buying criteria is going to be based on age and price. In terms of reliability and position, relatively speaking, they don't care that much, and so you can fudge a little bit, in terms of saving R&D costs and getting your product out sooner by not necessarily sticking the coordinates right there at the center. So let's close this out for a minute. And so what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to put in here 5.6. So I'm going to make it a little faster, and I'm going to make it 14.3, so just a little bit smaller. And then again, remember, reliability didn't matter too much to these folks. So here it's jacked up to 17.5. I'm going to move it way down to 14,500 in terms of reliability. Okay, I'm going to hit recalculate, and what do we end up with? Okay, well, Able didn't move a ton down, but that's okay, and I'll tell you why here in a minute. And so in looking at this tells me that I've got a product that's going to come out next round in April, which is pretty darn good, because that's a good, 7-8 months of sales time, and we've got an R&D cost of about 311 there, so $1 million. So that'll kind of tell you there. And again, anytime you have questions about what any of these things mean, hit the little information button and that kind of thing. So that product doesn't look too bad to me. Okay, so let's go to Acre. Now, what do people want in the product Acre? Well, again, you can go to either the Courier or you can go to the industry conditions report, and we can look at the customer buying criteria for the low end, if I can find it. Where is that? There we go. So low-end customers, I tell you what, let me go to the, let me go to the Courier here real quick. Make that look a little clearer. And let's go to our low-end segment. And so what that tells me is that these folks are most interested, to the tune of 77%, in the age of the product and the price of the product. They don't care too much about the positioning of it, and they don't care too much about the reliability of it. They want old and cheap. Now, that is important in making your decisions here, because they want a product that's 7 years old. The only way that a product gets old is by leaving it alone. If you make any change whatsoever in the performance, the size, or the reliability, that is basically going to create a product that's half again as new. So it's going to have the product and price. So the only way that you can get your product to age is to leave it be. So I am not going to make a lick of change here in the low end product. All right, now let's move down to Atom, which is our performance, or that's our high end product. And again, let's go and see what people in the high end product segment are interested in. So whoops, we're going to go to our reports, Courier high end. Alrighty, and that tells us that, as opposed to the low-end folks and the traditional folks, these people are very interested in the product's position. They want the fastest and the smallest. Almost 50%, 43% importance to them is the technology, essentially. They want that product as new as possible, brand spanking new. They want it pretty reliable, and they really don't give a hoot much about what the price of that product is going to be. So you've got some room there to play with it. So so here we are. We sit at the end at round 0, 8, 9, 11, 1. But we want to see, well, where's that going to be at round 1? What do people want maybe in round 1? So I'm going to go back to my industry conditions report. There we go. And we're going to slide down here. Where's my drift rates? There we go. And there's our high-end product, and I always have a dickens of a time reading these things. So is that right? Yeah. So hang on a sec. Okay, 5, 7, 14, 3, 307. Okay, so high end and performance, we're looking at next round. In round one, people are going to want a product 8.4 and 11.6 in size. And again, remember that's pretty important to them. So 8.4 and 11.6. So let's go back here, and we're sitting here at 8.0 and 12.0. Now it'd be pretty expensive R&D to crank this thing up. So let's try 8.4 and 11.6 just to see what happens. So I'm going to put 8.4 and I'm going to put 11.6. There we go. Let's see what happens there. Hit recalculate. Okay, that's not too bad. So that gives us a product that is going to be come out in April. It's going to be a year at revision. It's going to be $273. $273. I always act like it's dollars, but it's not in terms of R&D costs. But so that would be if you put it right at the center. So I'm going to play a little bit. Now you can leave it there, and that's not a bad deal. But I'm going to play a little bit, and I'm going to say, I'm going to see if I can save some money and maybe get the thing out quicker and newer. And so I'm going to go with 8.2. There we go. And 11.8. So not quite as fast, not quite as small as they want. And reliability, we're going to keep that the same because they're pretty interested in reliability. And then let's hit recalculate and see what happens. Okay, so that's going to come out about a month earlier, so I'll get an additional month of sales, a little bit newer, and cheaper in R&D costs. So I'm going to leave it at that for this. Now again, you can play with all these things, and you'll go back and you'll look at your pro formas and see how everything looks at the end. And again, I haven't drifted terribly far down this way, but that's okay. The strategies I always like to play, I always like to focus on these cheap old products here, but that's just me. You guys can do what you want. All right, so then we're going to look at aft, which is what is aft? Is that our size? Let's see here. Our performance segment. Okay, so there we go. So let's go look at what the folks in the performance segment want. Zip past it. There we go. So in the performance, they are most interested in reliability. Okay, they're second most interested in positioning, 9.4 and 16.0. Price is kind of secondary to them, and the age is kind of secondary to them. So your product can be a little bit older, but it better be pretty reliable. So I'm going to jump back here to that, and we're going to look, and I'm going to go about 8 point. What am I going to go? What are we talking about there? That's aft. Where's my aft? Okay. So I'm going to leave this at about 9.4 in terms of performance. And I'm going to just increase, I'm going to actually decrease my size a little bit, or increase my size a little bit. Well, let me go decrease it to 15.4. Okay. And I'm going to keep my reliability right up there at 25,000 because that's what they're really interested in. And again, you play with these numbers a little bit. I'm just kind of putting numbers in there, kind of off the top of my head. But you guys can, again, do different scenarios on these things. Again, don't expect just to throw in your first set of numbers and expect to be, oh boy, I did it. That's probably not going to happen. So I'm going to recalculate. All right, that's not bad. So I got a product that's pretty reliable. It's almost still sort of sitting on top of what it was before. But that's okay the first round because again, I'm really focusing on these. It's going to be 1.3 and pretty cheap to fix. So I'm pretty happy with that. You might not be. You might want to be more aggressive. Again, that's totally up to you. And then lastly, let's look at our size product, Agape. And let's see, let's go to our courier. Where'd that go? There we go. Okay, so Agape. There we go. So they're most interested there in the positioning, size of 4.0 and 10.6. Okay, so they want it to be. That's about where they want it. And then age is pretty important to them. They want about a year and a half old. Reliability is third most important. Price is not. Okay, so I'm gonna play around with this a little more. Let's see where they want this. What they want this to look like at round one. So I'm gonna go back to our reports. I'm gonna go to our industry conditions report and see where our size segment is going to drift to at round one. So where we got? There we go. 3.7 and 11.0. Is that what I'm seeing? So, so I'm gonna not be that concerned with the performance. I'm gonna set the performance. I'm going to keep it at 4, but since they're really interested in size, I'm going to set that size at. Yeah, I'm going to make it a little bigger than they want, okay? So I'm going to make it about 11.5. And let's see what happens if I recalculate there. Okay. And as you guys can tell, I really don't care a lot about these products here. So again, that's actually gone backwards a little bit. So let's try this. So, but otherwise, I have a product that comes out this year or this next round about where they want it age-wise, and R&D costs are a little much. So let's change this and let's make this. Let's just leave it at 11 and see what happens. Okay, let's hit recalculate. Okay, so it sits right on about the top there. And it's basically the same exact product, isn't it? So let's go back and make it 10.5 and see what happens. Get a little smaller. Okay. All right. Hit recalculate. I'm leaving the reliability the same. There we go. Okay. So there I got a product that's a little smaller. It's about the same performance, coming out in April. Age pretty decent, R&D cost pretty decent. So there I've developed all my products. Now I'm going to think around ahead. I'm going to think a little bit ahead because again, remember these things drift and move and all that kind of stuff. And so we sort of got Acre up here, and Acre and Able sell a lot of units of product throughout the simulation. So that's why I like to focus on them. But Acre, our old product, we're not doing anything to it, right? And so eventually, it is going to drift. These circles are going to drift down here, and it is going to fall out of both circles altogether. Now, if a product is in the center cut circle, it will sell products. If the product is in the rough cut circle, it will sell products. It might be in the rough cut circle of another segment, and it would sell products in that segment. But as long as it is in the center or rough cut, it's going to sell. If it is outside of the circles, it is not going to sell a unit. So at some point, Acre's going to get past 7 years old. And then what do? Do you R&D it, at that expense to try to bring it newer and then wait for it to get old again? Well, I wouldn't. And so what I do is I'm just planning on letting Acre just at some point after it gets to be 7 years old, I'm not going to do a thing to it. I'll sell off all its capacity at some point in time and just let it die. So it'll keep drifting this way. But what else is going to drift this way? Well, Able. My traditional product, if I don't make any big changes to it, it's going to continue to drift back that way. What's going to happen to Atom if I don't make any changes to it? It's going to continue to drift back that way. So at some point in time, Able will become my new low-end product. Atom at some point in time may become my new traditional product. But what about when that happens? Well, I'm going to want to develop new products. So I'm going to do that in the very first round. I'm just going to develop one additional product, and I'm going to call that product Apple. Okay, so I'm going to, that's a real original name, isn't it? APPLE, there we go. And I know that there's no way that Apple is going to come out in 2018. It's going to have to come out in 2019. So I am going to go to my industry conditions report, and I'm going to want to see where people are going to, where's that segment circle going to be in round 2? Where are people going to want that in round 2 when Apple comes out? And so for traditional, I see it's they want 6.4 performance, 13.6 in size. Okay, so I am going to go back here, and I've got Apple. And, okay, get rid of that little red thing there. There we go. Okay, so we are going to, for performance on Apple, it's going to be 6.4. And size is going to be 13.6. So that's, I'm putting those dead in the segment circles. And reliability, again, they really don't give a whole rat's behind about that. So I'm just going to put 14,000 on that for reliability for now. Okay. So there I've created a new product. Let's see what happens when I recalculate. There we go. Okay, so there's my product. I've got Apple, which is going to come out in February of 19, so not next round, but the following round. It's going to be new, brand spanking new, not much you can do about that. So it'll be a little newer than the folks in that segment want. But look at that, those R&D costs are pretty high. But we got money to borrow. And one thing I think that I've seen a lot of you do in the simulation is not borrow money. Again, first of all, this is pretend. So it's not like you actually have to pay the money back. But sometimes I think there's this notion that, well, debt's bad. And, well, maybe it is, but we're going to borrow the dickens out of some things here in a minute. So there I've sort of made my R&D decisions. And, again, I've looked at the Courier and I've looked at the Industry Conditions Report to do that, all right? Okay, so, and again, you can see that, Apple's not appearing here because it doesn't exist yet. And everything else is sort of, either down a little bit from where it is. Not big changes, but that's okay, all right? So now I'm going to move to our next set of decisions, which is marketing. Okay, and again, marketing asks us to, set a price, create a promo budget, and a sales budget. This benchmark production number, when you see that, ignore it. Okay, ignore it. It's worthless. And it'll even tell you it's worthless. I don't even know why they have it here. Click the information button. It is useless for forecasting because what the benchmark production does is it makes a bunch of assumptions about what you're going to do and about what the computer teams are going to do that are never right. So pay no attention to those at all. All right, so let's look at how we can set the prices, for these things. So let's look at Able, which is our traditional product, and let's see here. So let's go to our reports, our traditional report. Okay, there we go. And what does that tell us about price? Well, it says price is second most important in their buying criteria. As we sit here around 0, the price range is $20 to $30. Now, each round, roughly, the price is going to go down about 50 cents. So at the end of round 1, customers, or in round 1, customers are going to want to pay somewhere between $19.50 and $29.50 for the product. Okay, so I'm going to go back here. And I'm just going to pick a price that's sort of in the middle there. So I'm going to set that at $26. All right. Now, promo budget and sales budget. What in the world do those things do? Well, those things, promo budget helps people know about your product, and sales budget, helps get your product available and out to market so people can have it. Now, there are some kind of rules for this. You can read this if you want, but what I'll tell you quickly is that you have to spend kind of a minimum to have any real effect, and there's a diminishing return. So, for about each $1.5 million that you spend, you're going to get about, what does it tell us, about 23%. But then for the next $1.5 million, it only goes to 50, and so on and so forth. You can read that. So what I'm going to do is, because I'm really interested in selling my low and my traditional product, I'm going to kind of put those in at $1,500 a piece. Whoops, that's a lot there. I don't want that much. Let's see, there we go. Oops, come on. That's not going. There we go. $1,500 a piece. And again, play with this. And again, you may go look at when we look at our pro formas, and you see that you've got red contribution margins on there. You may have to go back and lower those. But again, we're just kind of doing that. So 26. Okay. So now forecasting. How many of these puppy doggies am I gonna sell? Well, again, we've talked about this sort of as we've gone through and debriefed some of your rounds. But again, you'll go to the Courier. You'll go to the traditional segment, which is what we're dealing with right now. you'll look here and it says that total industry demand this round was 73.87 with an expected growth rate of 9.2%. So I'm going to pull up my calculator here if I can find that. There we go. Okay, so we're going to take this year's sale, 73.87, and we're going to multiply that by the growth rate, 9.2%. Okay. That equals, well, that's wrong, isn't it? Let me try that again. 73.87. Yeah, 6, that's a little better. And then I'm going to add that, which is that sum, back to the industry demand for last year, 73.87. Gone it. One of these days I'll get this right. 7387 times 9.2% equals, what is going on here? Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. 7397 times 9.2%. There we go. So 680, roughly. So we're going to have a growth rate of about 681 units. I'm going to add that. I don't know why it's doing that. 680 plus 7387 equals 8067. Okay, so that should be the total that it would be sold in that segment next year. So what do we then decide we're going to forecast at? How much of that do we think we can get? Well, I mean, a good way to start looking at it is what's my market share this year? 16%. So I'm going to multiply that by 16%. And that's going to tell me that we're going to be able to sell roughly 1,042 units or something like that. I think that is a little low myself. So I'm gonna take kind of a best case scenario, and I'm gonna say that I think I can sell about 1,290 of those. Okay, I'm gonna just add a couple in there. So close that. So I'm gonna go back to that, and I'm gonna put 1,290. Okay. Now I did these similar calculations for each of the other segments, so you don't have to watch me bang around needlessly on the calculator. But for acre, I forecast, and again I went through that same scenario. It's 1601. Okay, and then for Adam, I calculated about 475 that I thought I could sell. And for Aft, I calculated using that same equation, 367. No, is that right? Yeah, 367. And for Agape, so using that same calculation, 376. Okay, and as you'll notice, I can't forecast Apple because it does not exist as of yet. So let's hit recalculate. Okay, so of course it looks bad because I haven't done anything else with prices here, and that kind of thing. But again, so you go back, you look at Courier, what do the low end people want to pay? And again, you just got to play with this. There is no right or wrong answer, but you look at the price range, and I'm going to price Acre at $22. I'm going to price Adam at $35 because again, the customers there. It's not a very price sensitive product. I'm going to price Aft at $34, and again you got to play with these numbers. You can't, again, it's not just going to come magic to you. And then I'm going to put Agape at about $34. Okay. There we go. And again, up to you as to what you want to do with promo budgets. Probably again, because I'm most interested in selling a bunch of Able and Acre, I'm probably going to jack up my promo budget on that, and I'm probably going to jack up my sales budget on that this round, and I'm probably going to leave the rest of them totally alone. So let's hit recalculate again. Okay, what am I still missing? Okay, we're okay. So we've got decent enough margins and all that kind of stuff. So Able's going to be a little expensive. All right, so we're okay. Okay, so now let's move on to production. All right, go back to decisions, production. There we go. First round production isn't too hard to figure out because again you've probably got enough capacity to meet all of your needs first round without or first shift without having to go into second shift and that kind of thing. But oh, I know what my problem is. Okay, hang on a sec here. Let me go back to I thought something looked funny. Go back to marketing. I think I got 12,900 units. That ain't gonna happen. Okay, there we go. I think I said 1290. Let's try that. There we go. That looks okay. I thought something looked funny. So yeah. So again, you can excuse me, kind of make these silly mistakes sometimes, and that'll happen. So you got to kind of go back and double check. All right. Well, let's go back to production. There we go. Okay, so and again, anyway, so you're going to have enough, in most cases, capacity to satisfy your, your first round without too much to do. So how do we forecast these things? Well, again, and this is a formula I stumbled across somewhere. I can't even remember where, but it's always worked out basically okay for me. And that's what I do is I take my unit sales forecast. So this came over from the forecast on the last page. It shows we have 189 units of inventory at hand. So how do I calculate what my production schedule is going to be? Well, I'm going to go back to my handy dandy calculator here and see if I can operate it any better than last time. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1290, which is my sales forecast. I'm going to multiply that by 1.15. You can go to 1.2, 1.25 if you want. And that gives me the sum of 1483. And from that, I'm going to subtract my inventory, 189 equals, so 1295. So I'm going to say I want to produce 1295 units. Okay. There we go. Don't worry about that production after adjustment thing. Okay, so moving on down here, we can see that I have capacity for 1,800 units. So I'm not going to have to get into second shift at all on this. Now, when you look at this capacity number down here, what this tells you is that this is first shift capacity. If you were to run second shift full bore on all of these, you would be able to produce 3,600, 2,800, 1,800, 1,200, 1,200 units. Okay, but again, that may not be what you want to do. So you might want to buy capacity as you go along and that kind of thing. Again, depending on what your strategy is and that kind of thing. So because I have plenty of capacity at this point, I'm not going to buy any this round. I mean, it may make sense too, but I'm not going to buy any in this round. But I'm going to increase my automation by about 1. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to increase that to 5. And again, there we'll hit recalculate. So, so we've invested, $7,200,000 in automation, which again, hopefully will drive labor costs down. I usually try to bump up automation on the lines that I'm going to continue to be interested in. 1 unit per time per round. That usually works pretty good. Okay, so I'm gonna again save you the trouble of watching me go through these gyrations. But again, you go through that same formula of taking unit sales forecast times 1.15 and subtracting inventory on hand. So acre, we would produce, we would order 1,601 units times, okay, so that calculates out to 1,802. Okay. I am going to buy an additional unit of automation there. Recalculate. There we go. Then I am going to, on Atom, let's see, I'm going to order 475. Is that right? No, I'm going to order 475 times 1.15. I'm going to order 596 units of Atom. And again, that's 475 times 1.15 minus 40. So what did I just say? 596. Okay. I'm going to leave capacity and automation alone on that for now. Aft, I'm going to order again 367 times 1.15 minus 78 will leave us with a production order of 344. And then on Agape, or Agape, I guess is how it's pronounced, I'm going to take 376 times 1.15 minus 62, and we are going to order 370 of the, no, we're going to order, 370 of those, so, whoops. Okay, and again, I'm not going to, you could, but I'm not going to, again, depending on your strategy, I'm not going to monkey around with automation or capacity change on that. But that leaves our good friend Apple out here. Now this is a mistake that many times can be made where you create a new product, but you gotta buy the capacity for it, even though, because remember, capacity doesn't just happen automatically. It takes a year to come into effect. So I know that I've got Apple coming out the year after next, and I'm going to need capacity for it. So I'll be relatively conservative. I'm going to buy 500 rounds or 500 units of capacity for Apple. That's maybe not enough, but we'll see. So let me hit recalculate there. There we go. And so it tells me I've got an investment this year of $17,800. I could invest up to $32,694. I may not be investing enough. I don't know. But again, I'm just sort of doing this to kind of see what our results are going to come out with. But so there we've made our, and again, I'm not going to produce any because I don't have the capacity, as you can see here, to produce any Apple. But I have purchased that, so I'm ready to go next round when Apple comes on to the market. So I've made all my my production decisions, my marketing decisions, and my my R&D decisions. So now let's go to HR will not be a factor the first round, and then let's go to finance. Okay, there we go. And oops, there's a red number. Don't like that red number at all. Well, why do I have that red number? Well, I bought a bunch of automation and capacity, and up to the tune of $17,800,000. And we got to buy that. I didn't sell anything. So what are we going to do? Well, I try to stay away from short-term debt because you got to pay that back the very next year. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to look at my long-term debt. And I guess a trick. The simulation is 8 rounds in length. The bonds are 10-year bonds, so that should tell you something about whether you have to pay the principal back or not. But this tells me that I can issue $18,994 worth of bonds. I'm gonna go for broke on this because I've created a new product. I've bought some new automation and capacity, and so I'm going to issue $18,900,000 worth of bonds. And let's hit recalculate here. There we go. Okay. Well, my cash position has suddenly changed to. Whoops. Let me close those. There we go. So my cash position is in the red. That's good, but I usually like to be over that. So I'm going to issue some stock. I'm going to issue 5,000 shares of stock. Okay. I don't know what my stock was. My stock price now $34.25, I guess. So anyway, so 5,000 shares of stock. Okay. I'm going to hit recalculate. Okay, I like that. Okay, so I've got about at least according to this, it's showing me 12,923,000. That should be enough to handle any unforeseen issues that I may have come into contact with. So I like that pretty well. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my pro forma page, and again, these pro formas, they are not gonna, they're not predictors of what's going to happen. And the pro forma I usually look at is the income statement. And I look at my margins. I look down here, and do I have any red numbers? Well, no, I don't. That looks good. 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 They could be better, but for our purposes of doing this round, that's good enough. And then there's nothing I'm going to be able to do about this because again, the product's not out. So I've just got a bunch of costs into it and no potential revenue to offset those. If you get in and you see that you have these red numbers, why then you go back and you say, well, maybe I don't R&D it as much, or maybe I reduce my sales budget, or maybe my promo budget I drop a little bit, or maybe I increase my prices on that particular product. You got to play with it and see what happens. But again, these pro formas will show you any major issues. And again, I always like to look at this one. But again, they're not predictive as to how the round is going to work. So that looks pretty good. I'm pretty okay, pleased with that round. So now I'm going to go to my files here. Okay. And we are going to update our official decisions. And I'll check my little box there. And I'm going to hit save. There we go. And voila. We are uploaded. So now, how did I do? Let's go see what this looks like. This will process right away for me. So I'm going to get out of, I think, will this let me out? Okay. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to log out of that. I'm going to go back and log in under my professor page. I'm going to go to the demo. No, I don't want to go to the demo. I want to go back to the professor page. There we go. Okay. And I'm going to process the round. This is what I do for you. If the round comes in late, I have to manually process it. Otherwise, it processes automatically. So advance my industries. There we go. And then I should be able to go to my reports. And I'm going to go to the Capstone Courier. And let's see what round one looks like for Princely Company here. Hopefully there's not a bunch of red numbers, although I have done it before and there have been. Oh, okay, well that looks not too shabby. So let's look what we've got here. Nice cumulative profit, made a good profit last year, avoided an emergency loan. I'm really happy with those sales. It looks like, am I leading this? Yeah, I'm actually leading in sales this time. Now that's tougher to maintain. Good contribution margin. My asset turnover ratio looks good, which means I'm just about, for every dollar I spend, I'm making $1 of revenue. Or every dollar in assets that I have, I'm making $1 in revenue. My return on assets is pretty good. So that looks pretty good. Let's go down here. My stock price, not the highest in the world, but it increased. And so, as long as we're pointing up, that's pretty good. Issued a bunch of bonds, so we're looking at triple C rating, so we could probably improve that. Well, let's see, no big red numbers there. So let's look at how did I do in terms of my forecasting and production. Well, I stocked out of my traditional products. So remember, that's the one that I felt pretty good about, and so I jacked it up a couple hundred units. Well, I didn't jack it up enough because I stocked out. Traditional, pretty good. I just had 100 units left. Again, ideally you're wanting one, but 100, I can live with that. High, 80 units left, not too bad. Stocked out of performance, so that might be something I want to look at next time. And size, about hit that baby on the nose with 7 left. And then again, of course, Apple, nothing, because again, that will not go for sale until next year. So yeah, so pretty pleased with that round. The first round is usually pretty easy. You can already see that some of my competition, has really, our company Digby is really pushing the limits on size, performance, and high end. That's obviously where they're going to focus. I, on the other hand, will focus on these back here and continuing to drift. So I'm pretty pleased with where the company sits and all that kind of thing. So again, it gets harder after 8 rounds because the cost to R&D goes up. You got to start deciding: do I want to keep improving this product? Do I want to start I want to get rid of it. What do I want to do? And so probably what I'll do maybe after a couple, 3 rounds is I'll keep playing this along with you, and then maybe do another briefer walkthrough just to kind of show you how I'm doing. And I could be sucking big time. You never know. You just never know what happens on this. But I'm pretty happy with this first round, and hopefully this has given you kind of an idea of where you need to start doing your decisions and how these formulas all work together. So again, if you have questions or anything, do not hesitate to give me a holler. I'm happy to meet with you if that works. But again, this is a process. This is a journey, not a destination, and I think you'll all be just fine. So again, let me know if you have any questions, and we will talk to you soon. So have a good one.